Well, I did not want to make this video, but we are here. Jake Paul, Anderson Silva. Let's break it down. Is Jake Paul the king of YouTube boxing? No. Logan Paul is the king of YouTube boxing. Logan Paul is the king of YouTube boxing, but Jake Paul is now number 2, the king. I think KSI is... I can't call KSI the king yet. Well, you could, but I just feel like with Logan Paul fighting Floyd Mayweather, that automatically makes you the best. Well, Jake Paul has now surpassed KSI in terms of competition in the ring. Before, I think they were pretty equal. Now, I think Jake has faced a tougher opponent, technically, than KSI has ever faced. And that's... impressive. He outboxed Anderson Silva, something that nobody thought was going to happen. I didn't make a prediction video, mainly because the Jake Paul videos don't get views, and there's that pretty much. And I don't like talking about him, but did say in my own head and thoughts, Jake only wins this with the knockout. Now, he didn't knock him out, but he knocked him down. And I think that knockdown is what secured Jake that unanimous decision win. Now... what does this do for Jake Paul's overall career? He's going to fight Nate Diaz, probably. Will he beat Nate Diaz? Of course he will. I said this after he fought Ben Askren, I believe. Jake Paul can beat any MMA fighter, and I firmly believe that now. Do I think he beats Conor? I don't know. I'm a little on the... I need to see Conor fight again, but that's good. Jake Paul can beat Conor. He'll beat Conor McGregor. He's going to beat Conor McGregor. He can beat any MMA fighter. And I said this many times in videos, in private. Jake Paul can only lose to one person, and that's KSI. Or you just call it the Olatunji family. Because if KSI can't do it, Daddy's going to do it. KSI will not lose to anybody except Jake Paul. And that's fact. I mean... if he fights Tommy Fury, KSI's winning. Andrew Tate, gonna win. Anderson Silva, gonna win. Tyron Woodley, gonna win. Jake Paul fights Tommy Fury, Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor. He's going to beat them. Because universe, fate, destiny, that is devoid of logic and clear boxing, like, analysis and breakdown, this goes beyond that. Should we be discrediting this win? No. This was Jake's best fight. This was the best he's ever looked technically. His best opponent. He faced the best adversity from a boxing technique perspective. And also, Anderson fought like he was 27. Anderson moved way better than any of Jake's opponents. Cannot be compared to a YouTube boxer with someone like a Tyron Woodley, a Ben Askren, a Nate can be. However, there is a flip side to that, well, he kind of is, and I'm going to get to that. But yeah, I definitely do think you can't discredit this win. But if you go and say, because he beat Anderson Silva, he can beat Tommy, well, yeah, if he fights Tommy before KSI. But if you're saying, oh, he can beat Canelo, he could beat Asim Rahman Jr., he could beat, these real professional boxers, that's just not the case. Could he take on most of the YouTube scene? 100%. But are there a few YouTubers that could beat Jake Paul? Yes, I do believe that. But we can't say this was staged, or this was rigged, or this was fake, or that the knockdown was whatever. But what I will say is that I do, when I look back at the Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight, I notice how much better Anderson looked technically from a boxing perspective. And with this fight, it seemed as if he almost went down in levels. It almost like his boxing IQ went from here to here. Like, it was so odd, because he was not doing the things that were most successful in this Julio fight, and he wasn't doing things that were vital for him to win. So it was a very strange showing from Silva, but again, Jake's pace, I think, was a lot quicker than Julio's, and Jake's obviously a bigger guy than Julio. He's going to pack more power in his punches, so I completely understand why Anderson might have not been able to get into the groove and get into the rhythm and figure out Jake, because he was constantly being kept under pressure. Now, As for Jake Paul's, he improved a lot. I think that maybe instead of having fights every 4 or 5 months, he should take, a good chunk of time off because his head movement was better, his footwork was better, he was a lot more nimble, he was a lot more quick, his punches are a lot more solid, they're a lot more, together, and they're not, like, swooping and, like, looping. I mean, he's still doing that, but it's just a lot cleaner. And he didn't gas out. His gas tank was so much better. And I don't know who his new coach is, but that coach that was basically yelling at Jake and telling him, what the F are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, Jake needed that, because I feel like if he just stayed with BJ Flores, we wouldn't have gotten this version of Jake. So I think that coach was vital to why Jake Paul won this fight. Heck, I don't think Jake Paul could have won this fight without that other coach. Anderson, when he used his jab, it was beautiful. He had beautiful head movement, beautiful footwork, moved in and out, made Jake miss a ton of times. He was so accurate with his punches and with his combinations and pressuring Jake and taking advantage of Jake's weaknesses. And when Anderson went into that mode, it was truly like, oh, he's on another level. So again, and what Anderson was displaying from a boxing perspective, from a boxing IQ perspective, was levels above any of Jake's opponents and levels above any YouTuber. However, why he kind of, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Anderson Silva is kind of like Tyron Woodley, which kind of makes him a bit of a YouTube boxer, is because of his stance. He did the one thing that I was afraid he was going to do. He did the one thing that I was like, if you don't do that, and Jake can still win this, then I don't have to get hated on. I don't have to admit the ugly truth. Here's picture one. We see Jake land a nice, clean jab. We see that he's in a much better stance from a boxing perspective. And we see that Anderson Silva is standing very rigid and without much movement, very statuesque, very reminiscent of Tyron Woodley. His hands down with his body and part of his head exposed. He's literally standing straight up, very stiff, very stationary. Even the commentators were like, Anderson's a lot more stationary in this fight. And that was Jake Paul's keys to success. It wasn't so necessarily that because Jake did outpoint Anderson, but he did not outbox him. Because Anderson gave the win to Jake on a silver platter. Jake was able to do the same thing that he did with Tyron Woodley and with Ben Askren to Anderson Silva. Because Anderson was so stiff, standing so straight up, that it was very easy for Jake to land the jab, the body shot, the huge hooks and whatnot. And it's not even, and again, maybe, and I know that Jake's powerful and Anderson might have been like, oh, this hurts, and he was just trying to cover up, but with a guy that has that much experience, that's that good of a boxer, you would think he would recalibrate and change his stance and change the way that he does things in the next round or do something different. Because he didn't do anything different from round to round. He was very trigger shy. He was very hesitant. It was just very awkward, and not awkward, it was so weird to see. Because I expected so much out of Anderson, and when Anderson actually was, like, on it, I was like, where is this? And I went back and watched the Julio fight, and I'm like, Anderson wasn't using his jab at all in this fight. And when he did back up Jake with the jab, Jake was like, what is going on? So, and again, I believe that a solid jab goes a long way when you're fighting Jake Paul. Then we have this another image of Jake throwing one of these wild shots, and this is something that Anderson did consistently throughout the fight, is avoiding the shots. And, Woodley did the same thing, but when you have an opponent that is throwing these haymaker shots, and his left side of his head is clear open for a nice counter, Anderson should be finding a way to avoid that shot, but still staying in close range to land that overhand on Jake Paul, which he most certainly does, and there is no excuse for him not to do that. It seemed that, every time Jake would do that, he just wanted to get out of the way, instead of, how do I get out of the way and avoid this shot, but still stay in the game and not just let Jake get away with that. Because I'm telling you, someday someone's going to make Jake pay for throwing one of those shots, and it's going to be real ugly, and he's still doing it. And he's going to continue to do that until he gets punished for it. Although I like that he wasn't throwing shots with his head down. Again, another shot of Jake's hands pretty low. A jab could have been initiated right there. And then we have this shot of Again, Jake's hands very low, and Anderson, once again, standing up super straight. But Anderson could have landed that shot to Jake's chin. And another thing I noticed was in the early rounds, Anderson was not at all going to the body. There was clear openings when he could have gone to the body, gone and jabbed. And he just, if Anderson jabbed Jake, and he did that more, I mean, this would have been so much more closer, and it could have made Anderson win despite getting knocked down. He almost couldn't see that, and it just blows my mind that he couldn't understand or see something that is so basic, and that Jake Paul was able to, like, figure out very quickly. And it's not like it was that advanced of a move at all. It wasn't like Jake Paul was this top-tier God-level boxer that was doing these insane moves. It was, it was very, like, odd that Anderson would not get the concept of this. Again, another shot of Anderson, almost in a punching bag-esque position, with Jake's throwing a nice body shot, and eventually he goes into the stance again, and Jake lands an overhand right onto his head. And again, the stance of Silva is what killed his chances in this fight. He never fixed it. He never improved on it. His coaches didn't say, Anderson, get the head movement rolling. Just don't be a stationary target. Does anyone else see this? Like, it just blows my mind that Anderson, who is this top-tier boxer, does not make the simplest, most basic, fundamental adjustments. It'd be a different thing if Anderson Silva was bobbing and weaving his head in a really good position, and Jake still caught him. Then I'm like, okay, there we go. But this was just, again, it was just didn't make sense. It didn't line up with Anderson's abilities prior to this fight. And then again, we see right there, he lands that shot, and Anderson just lets him hit him with a shot. Now, this video that you're seeing, we see that Jake is once again hands low, and as you remember from the picture that I showed you, he was in the exact same position. Boom, Anderson lands the jab. Why didn't he do that more? I have no idea. And Anderson was trying too hard with that uppercut. I'll say that for sure. And another thing is, Anderson almost couldn't keep his distance, or couldn't find the right distance, especially when he was near Jake, and he almost got muffled the punches that he was throwing. Again, another shot of Jake kind of seeing what... this is a two-shot photo. So Anderson, again, very stationary, very stiff. His hands are, like in a weird position, almost in a Ben Askren type position. His chin, you'll see, is exposed. And then, boom, that nice jab from Jake Paul lands. Again, another shot where Jake is throwing a punch and his head is wide open, and Anderson isn't capitalizing on that. Again, another shot where Anderson is standing essentially straight up with his guard protecting his body, but his head, it's almost lackadaisical, like he was so out of it. And then Jake, boom, lands that nice shot. And then this is another video of Anderson doing some body work. Oh, that was the knockdown, actually. So you just watched the knockdown of Jake. And as you can see from these photos, and this is how he got the knockdown. So you can see that Anderson is standing very stationary with his hands like this, which is something you never do. Like, I know KSI has his hands low, but, like, this is, it's like one of the worst for at least for someone against Jake Paul, never do that. And again, Anderson, his body's exposed, his head's exposed, and Jake goes in with the jab. And here, I mean, like, I'm sorry, but, like, he's literally he's standing like this. He's literally standing for Jake to just bang. No, it's no wonder that he got the knockout, because he was standing in front of Jake like this. And I'm like, okay, maybe if he was going to roll back or he was going to use some head movement, I'd be like, okay, I get what you're doing, Silva. But you didn't do any of that. He just stood there. He stood there. Like, I'm sorry to break the bad news. I know Anderson's the GOAT of MMA. But he's not the GOAT of boxing. Please, somebody debate me in a civil way with great points that will make me look like an idiot. Because I feel like I'm the only one that's saying this. That's saying this was Silva giving Jake Paul his win on a silver platter. Not that Anderson was paid off, it's just that Anderson's ability, his literal stance, made it very easy for Jake Paul to knock out Anderson Silva. If Anderson Silva was ducking and weaving and doing this, you know what I mean? And Jake still did it, like, whoa. And it's not even that Anderson has boxing IQ, but somehow, for some reason, Jake had better boxing IQ in this fight than Anderson did. And then we see this shot, which, I don't even know what that stance is, man. And then, bang, he lands that shot. And Anderson would have probably avoided this if he actually... And I think he was dazed, and his nose was bleeding too, and he seemed very fatigued. But if he just ducked and banged, he wouldn't have actually gotten hit. And then we see that Jake lands the shot right on the chin of Anderson Silva, and then he gets knocked down. And then, obviously, Jake wins on points. And when you watch that fight, Jake was outpointing Anderson pretty much every single round except for a few. So overall, I think that that's my breakdown of the fight. And again, the flip side of the positive of Anderson is his stance. Like, there were... KSI wouldn't get hit with the shots that Anderson Silva would get caught with. He would have a much better stance than Anderson Silva. He would. He'd have better head movement. I'm not saying he could get caught another way, but he would get caught in a way where it's like, oh, okay, like Jake really had to work for that. Whereas with this, he's literally standing up. And he's like, literally like standing up. And Jake just sees that and just goes bang. I mean, is that not a punching bag? Is that not... This video is going to be crazy controversial. That's for sure. Anyways, like, sub, and comment. I want you to hate on me. I want you to love me, debate me. But don't be a keyboard warrior. Actually debate me and show up.